I'm Judy Zelina. This is the Millcreek Government Channel. Is your medicine cabinet full of expired drugs or medications you no longer use? Medication accumulation in the home and improper disposal of medications can cause various public health concerns, including environmental issues, accidental poisonings, and drug diversion. Medication return units are a safe, simple, secure, and environmentally friendly way to help law enforcement agencies and communities collect unwanted or expired household medication, including prescriptions, over-the-counter drugs, and unused pharmaceuticals in locations throughout the United States. Today on the program we have Kim Burns. Kim is a professor at the Lecom School of Pharmacy, and Kim is here to give us some very valuable tips on how to dispose of unwanted medications. Kim, thank you for being on the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Kim and I happened to run into each other. We were at a county event, and we were talking about these medication return units, and we just thought it was really important to get the word out to our viewers on why it's so important to use them and where they are.
Correct.
So first off, proper disposal of medication. Why is that so important, Kim?
Okay, so you touched on in your introduction, but there's really three main reasons that I like to focus on why it's really important to dispose of your medications properly. And this has really been more of a societal change that we've been trying to work with society for the last 10 or 15 years. But the three main reasons are it's better for the environment, it can decrease accidental poisonings, and it can impact drug diversion. So I'll talk about each of those a little bit briefly. So when we get into the best way to dispose of medications, there's recommended ways to do that first. If you don't follow those ways, and if you do what has traditionally been done in the past for medication disposal, which is most people in the home just throw it in the trash or flush it down the toilet.
And that's what we used to be told to do,
exactly.
To flush it in the toilet.
Yeah, and there are still a few drugs that we do recommend flushing because there's such a high risk of overdose and death that that's the best way to get rid of it. But for the vast majority of medications today, we do not recommend putting them in the trash directly or down the sewage or down the sink or anything like that. So what happens is if you do that in the toilet or down the sink or even in the trash, which eventually makes it out to the landfill,
right,
that medication can get into the environment, particularly rivers, lakes, things like that. And there's been a few studies over the last 10 years that have shown that there's been some waterways that have had some medications in there and maybe had some impact on fish and some wildlife and stuff like that. So you know, there's not enough data out there to say exactly what harm it does, but the prudent thing is if there's more safe ways to dispose of your medication that's safer for the environment, then let's do that. So when we get into the medication return units, the method that's used for that is incineration, and that's an Environmental Protection Agency approved incineration, which is safer for the environment than putting it down the sink or in the trash or something like that.
And and you're right. Even if there's a slight chance that it's going to harm fish or people, you know, drinking spring water or anything like that, you've got to be prudent about this.
Yeah, and I think currently the water treatment facilities don't look for the drugs and treat for stuff like that, so we want to make sure that it's just the prudent thing to do.
Right.
And we will still have drugs in the environment through excretion process and stuff like that, so this isn't the only thing that contributes to it, but let's try and do the prudent thing. If there's a safer way to get it out there and you know, not impact the environment as much, then let's try and do it that way.
Now, explain to our residents, they're thinking, okay, if I throw it in the trash, it's going to go to the landfill. How in the world is this going to impact the environment?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, we don't want it in the trash because you could also get like animals that get in there, or kids or something, which could lead to an accidental poisoning. There's that too. But then eventually that does break down and deteriorate, and it goes into the landfill area, which gets into the ground, which eventually goes into the waterways. So it is a process, but that's also another reason that can happen as well too.
So if you're thinking that you're just throwing it in the trash and it's going to be safe at a landfill, it can easily break down and get back into our waterways.
Yeah, and we do, as a secondary or third way, recommend a specific way to throw in the trash, which we'll go over. But just to take your medications and throw it directly in the trash is not recommended.
Okay. You were talking about accidental poisonings. Now, how big of a problem is this in the United States?
It's pretty big. There's hundreds of thousands of calls to poison control centers or people that go to emergency room visits every year because of accidental poisonings to medications. And it's usually kids. It also happens to pets too. So if you have kids that wander around the home, you know, and they're looking through the cabinets and stuff and they find something and they're able to open up those bottles, they may take those medications. And then of course you have people that sometimes forget to take their medications, or they think they forgot to, and they take more. So sometimes there's those types of issues. But just to try and avoid those issues with kids and stuff like that, if you have unused medications or expired medications, leaving them around your home basically is letting people have access to them. So especially if you think, oh, I might need those in like 3 or 6 months when I get sick, or I might need them again, by leaving them there, especially if you have kids or younger people or pets or animals, they could get into there and it could lead to an accidental poisoning.
So, okay, unused medications, we were talking about just leaving it in the home. I mean, if I think I put it in a safe place or I put it up in the cupboard, why can't I just leave it there? I mean, who's it really hurting?
Yeah, so if you do need medication and you still are using them, and it needs to be in your home, you just want to make sure you store them safely where people can't get to them. So the problem though is that many people leave them in their medicine cabinets or maybe like a cabinet in their kitchen, and kids explore. And then when we get into diversion, people start exploring too. So maybe people who are working in your home or friends and family or something like that. So what we recommend is make sure it's in a secure place. So for kids, you would want it to be up high maybe somewhere, or maybe even like in a lock box or some kind of box that shuts and locks, that you can access it that way. But a lot of times I go into my friends' homes and they have medications sitting on the windowsill because they want to remind themselves every day to take something. Right? So it's freely there in the open for anyone or any animal or something like that to get.
Mm-hmm. Or like you said, anybody just coming into the home, a worker, or somebody who's looking for something.
And that's what diversion is,
type,
right?
Type of medication like that. Now, there are different ways to dispose of the medications, aren't there? Now, we're here, specifically, we're going to be talking about the medication return units. So I'd like to get into that a little bit. You know, exactly, tell me about these. How long have they been implemented throughout the United States, and actually how do they work? How easy is it?
It's very easy. It's pretty much like a mailbox and taking a letter to the post office and putting it in there. So really when in 2010 the White House published a report about how prescription drug abuse has become an epidemic in our country, and really what they focused on is all the overdose deaths that are going on around the country, which have continued to increase. And this past year, we saw even more of an increase. Over 60,000 people died in the United States because of overdose deaths. So it really, truly is an epidemic across our country. And it's an epidemic in Pennsylvania, and it's an epidemic in Erie. Okay. So this isn't the only reason why we have the med return boxes, but this is one of the main reasons. And a lot of that had to do with people becoming addicted to prescription drugs, particularly prescription opioids, which are pain medications, as well as other addictive type drugs. So when you leave them in the house, again, that leaves an access point for people to steal or divert those medications, whether it be a friend or a family or or a worker that's coming into the home. And then we just don't want to recommend just to throw them in the trash, as we talked about. So we want people to get rid of them. So then we had to come up with, well, what else can we do to help dispose of these medications? And legally, there's issues with you taking them back to your pharmacy or your doctor's office.
That's what I was going to ask. I get them from the pharmacy. Why can't I take them to the pharmacy?
Yeah, so there's reasons why they can't. Now today they can if they go through certain steps, but most pharmacies aren't. There is one pharmacy in Erie County currently that does do that, but for most parts you can't take it back to your pharmacy and then take it back and dispose of it for you. Okay. So now you're left with your medication in your home. What do you do with it? So we tell you not to throw it in trash. You have limited options to go to it. So these medication return units came one way to be able for people to bring it and dispose of it. And law enforcement doesn't have the legal restrictions that pharmacies do to take them back. So we kind of started this program back in 2011. It was 2011. We started with one unit. I believe it was Corey was the first one, and then Gerard were the first two. And then we kept on adding at other law enforcements. And now there's 12 that the public health department oversees, and there's 2 other ones. So there's 14 boxes throughout the county right now. And we'll give you those locations. But basically, you take your unused or expired medications to those, and you just dump them in there like they're just like a mailbox. And then those drugs are basically kept, and then they're collected, and then they are incinerated, which is safer for the environment.
And who does the incineration again?
So currently, through these boxes, they are actually picked up by the National Guard, and then they're taken to a site about an hour from here that's incinerated.
Okay. What I wanted to ask too is, if I bring my medications, do I have to rip the labels off with my name and all that? I should do that?
So basically, when you put these medications in the boxes, they're just collected and incinerated. No one's looking at your names and stuff like that. But so you could leave that on there. But just to be safer, if you feel more comfortable, most pharmacy labels rip directly off. It's very easy, and then do that. Or you could take like a black Sharpie and you can mark off your name or something like that. And you can bring them right back in the bottle and dump them in there. Some people like to take them out of the bottles. They like to put them like in a little baggie or something like that and then dump the baggie in there. That's fine as well too. Sometimes those bags break though, so it makes it a little bit hard, and then we're picking up the pills as we're trying to get the drugs out. So there's multiple ways to do it, but the best way is to probably leave in your containers.
Okay.
Either black it out or rip off those pharmacy labels for privacy reasons. But I can assure you that it is confidential and that people aren't looking through the names and stuff like that.
Will they open the bottles and empty the pills? That's how they do that?
No, they just dump all the.
So all of that,
even the
all of that is
container,
going to be destroyed.
Yes, right. And some people do like to recycle their containers, so that's why they don't want to put everything in the box.
Right.
So that's why we say, well, if you put it in a bag, you're like another type of container, hopefully that doesn't break in there,
Right.
then that's okay as well too.
If I bring my unused medications to any of these units, or even a take back, do I need to identify what these pills are? Say I
Nope.
throw them in a baggie or something like that?
No, it's completely anonymous. We really don't care, and it's just not for controlled substances, for all drugs. We just really want to get them out of the home so we can, help impact these issues that I talked about, environmental issues, accidental poisonings, and diversion. And then, so we can help with that. They can be incinerated, which is the safer way to deal with it, but we're not looking at what types of drugs. Now, at one point, there were studies going on with these take backs just to see what kind of drugs are coming back and how many controlled substances were coming back, but that was under, an IRB approved thing and
Okay.
stuff like that. But in general, you just take it back. There's no questions asked. You dump it in there, and then that's incinerated.
I have to make an observation because we were talking about over-the-counter medications. These return units, you would bring your over-the-counter medications too, because I think that most people think, well, it's over-the-counter, it's not that dangerous, I can just throw it away.
No, so over-the-counter
Because it's not a prescription.
Right.
They keep thinking, oh, those are the ones that are so bad and need to be controlled. But any over-the-counter, right?
Yes, and the same thing, just not prescription, but also over-the-counter. Over-the-counter medications are still drugs. So they still go through an approval process, right? And they can still harm the body. If you take a whole bottle of Advil, you're gonna hurt yourself, okay? But the purpose of over-the-counter medications is that so you don't have to go to the doctor, wait for an appointment and get something. So if you have a headache, you can easily grab it. But you still wanna store them safely. You wanna keep them out of the hands of kids and stuff like that. And there are a few over-the-counter medications, if taken improperly, could also lead to an overdose as well too. So they aren't necessarily safe just because they're over-the-counter. You always want to use them as labeled. So if it says, for a headache, take 1 to 2 a day, don't take more than 2 a day. You want to make sure you follow that. You know what I mean? But if someone would get a hold of those and take more, like a kid, they could also have an overdose on those medications as well too.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want those to come back as well too.
That's what I think is interesting. Because I knew that from just talking with you and about, working with the return units. But I think most people think, oh well, it's just a cold pill.
Right, it's
Just
something
throw it
that's
away.
sold over on the counter.
Oh, it's
right,
expired.
safe, right.
I can just throw it away.
So yeah, you should really think about them in safety-wise the same way as your prescription drugs.
Okay, and I think that's important. I think it's important for all of the viewers to realize that they are just as important as any prescription in the little gold bottle.
And in fact, there are some over-the-counters that are the same thing as prescription drugs, but in different strengths.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
right.
So they are still drugs.
Okay. All right. Now, we were talking about the medication return units, but there are other ways to properly dispose of used medication, correct, Kim?
Correct. So basically, if you can't make it to one of the units or it's not convenient for whatever reason, the first thing would be something that's very similar to the med return units, and that's a National Take Back Day, and that happens twice a year.
Okay.
That is funded through the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is the federal government, and basically local law enforcement sign up with the DEA, and it happens twice a year. Like the next one is October 28th of this year, 2017, and then there'll be one in the spring, and we get the dates a couple months in advance. But typically we have from 6 to 10 law enforcement that sign up for that.
Okay.
And it's usually on a Saturday from 10 to 2. And it's, they put it on the DEA website, the locations, and it might be advertised throughout the community, and people can come to that site as well.
Okay.
And it's pretty much, now the law enforcement people are taking the medications back. It's picked up by the Drug Enforcement Administration and incinerated. So very similar to the take back units that we talked about, but instead of an ongoing program, it's just twice a year. So that's one way of doing it, if those boxes aren't convenient for you. But I can't say every time where these locations are at because they vary. But we will give you a website to go to the DEA to try and find that if that's interest. But then if you can't get to these places, either the boxes or the National Take Back Days, there are ways to dispose of it in the home yourself, which is safer for these issues that we were talking about. So there are going to be some drugs, and your pharmacist can educate you on this, that we do want you to flush immediately. For example, a fentanyl patch.
Okay.
The fentanyl patches such as the Dorgesic.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason why is because they are so, there's such a risk of people overdosing on them that get them in hand. So a lot of hospice patients have them, a lot of cancer patients have them. And if they're in the home, you could, if someone breaks one of those, and they can die of an overdose in a couple minutes.
Really?
Yeah, and there's been overdose deaths of kids or people that are trying to get high on those drugs. They break into it and they die in a couple minutes. So it's actually recommended that those are flushed immediately. And because they're so highly diverted, you don't want to leave them in the home and say, okay, I'll take them to a take back event next week or something like that. You know what I mean? Because someone could steal them. And actually people seek to steal these types of medications. So what happens is they look to see, you know, who died, were they, you know, at home or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
They might be stolen by, by workers that go into the home or something like that. So typically, as soon as they're not needed, we say that those should be flushed down the toilet. But again, that's a very limited list of medications.
Okay.
So outside of those, though, if you, we just don't want you throwing them right down the toilet or in the trash. What you could do is first, if you have used coffee grounds or kitty litter, you could add it to that. Okay. So they kind of absorb the medications and they make them non-retrievable. All
right.
And then you would want to put it like in a coffee can or some kind of bag it up, and then put them in the garbage that's about to get out.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of risk with that still, but not as much.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's one way. The other way is that there's currently a few products out there, and I just brought two. Okay.
I like show and tell.
And one of these are Attorney General Josh Shapiro. He actually had some funds to buy these products, and these are available throughout many pharmacies in Erie County right now at no charge, but when they're gone, they will be a few dollars. But basically, it's a charcoal activated type bag, and you can take up to 45 pills, put them in here, add water, and then it makes this chemical reaction that makes it non-retrievable and biodegradable and safer for the environment, if you will. So this is an option.
And then what do I do with that after I put my pills in there?
So there's instructions in the back, but basically you put the pills in, you add water, you wait a little bit, and then you put it in the trash.
Okay.
Okay. And then another similar one is this one is called Dispose RX, and these I believe are about $1 or $2 per pack. And then when you have pills left in a container, you would actually add a little bit of water, put this in there, and then put the lid on and shake it. And it pretty much does the same thing as this, just a different chemical.
Okay.
But it binds it, and you can't retrieve it, and it's biodegradable, so it's safer for the environment. So.
Where would I be able to get either of these two?
So currently most of these are available at a lot of pharmacies across the town, and then there's also these that can be ordered, or they're available as well too. So you would have to ask your pharmacy for them. And then many pharmacies also have an envelope that you can, again, purchase, and most of them are a few dollars, and you can put your pills directly in this envelope and put in the mail, and it actually goes back to a facility that then disposes of it and incinerates you for you. So there are some other methods out there if you can't get to one of the boxes.
Okay.
But in general, we say try and go to the box or take back event if that's available. Use one of these home methods here.
All right.
Okay. And then again, the few medications that should be flushed down the toilet to do that.
Okay. I noticed you have over there's a bottle with an interesting top on it, and I know I was talking with Mary from the Erie County Health Department, and she was explaining how interesting these lids are.
So, yeah, there's a number of things going on out there right now for medications that are stored in the home that you are currently using to try and make sure that people aren't taking your medications or there's not improper access to them.
Okay.
So, and again, one of the major drugs that is diverted are opioid prescriptions,
Right.
Oxycontins, Percocets, things like that. So there's currently some available through the county offices, and we have some, but there's probably other ones that you can buy out there too.
Right.
This is just an example of a cap that goes on the container, and basically when you open it and you take out your medication and then you put this back on, the timer starts. So now you know the last time you opened up your bottle. So it can also help with adherence too.
Right.
So if you're to take something 3 times a day,
Okay.
you know that's about every 8 hours. So when you open it up, right, the next time you should be like, oh, okay, there's 8 hours on there.
Okay.
Right? You open it up, you put it back on, now the time starts again. So if anyone is improperly accessing your medications, you can kind of tell by that.
So there's really two, it's a twofold
Right. Helps
bonus
with
with
adherence,
these.
and then also to watch your medications.
Right.
And whenever you do have a medication that is diverted or could be stolen or something like that, you can also do counts on them too. So like if you get 60 of them, and if you pick it up on August 1st and you're taking 2 a day, they're going to last you the month.
Right.
And if you're looking and you're going, oh, there's like only a few left, and why am I running out early? There's a problem. Why? Whether you're not remembering you're taking them or you're taking extra, or someone might be accessing your medication.
Right, that's great. That is really a great idea. I thought that was pretty slick.
Yeah, so you
At
can
first when I saw it, I thought, well, really, what would you need that for?
Yeah. Well, it is, and it's important that we educate the people on why it's there, right?
Exactly.
Because they might pick it up and go, okay, well, what does this mean to me? But again, there's multiple reasons why you can have that.
Kim, this has really been great. This has been so informative. Our time is really kind of coming to an end here. Is there anything that you wanted to get across to the viewers that we may not have touched base on here yet?
I guess just to reiterate the importance that in the home with medications, we have people that come to these take-backs with boxes and boxes, and they hoard them for decades, some of them. That's not good. So we want to do whatever we can to help clear out your cabinets, right? Make sure that they're disposed of the best way possible and that you understand this. So we'll give some information about the 14 boxes around the county. We'll give a phone number to call if there's any questions. We'll give the DEA website for you to go to see if there's, when the take-backs are and what sites you can actually visit for that. And there's people in the community to help with this. Ask your pharmacist, ask your healthcare provider. They should be able to educate you too on these different types of methods. And again, the proper storage of medication in the home when you do need them, it's very important to try and do things like this, or to make sure that they're stored somewhere that you know that people won't get to them.
Okay. Kim, really great information. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really been informative. I learned a lot today.
Great.
If you have any questions on anything that we talked about, or if you want more information, please give the Erie County Health Department a phone call. Check out their website. So until next time, thank you for tuning in to the Millcreek Government Channel.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.